Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Transcending Together with Julianne, Lee, and Rachel. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Transcending Together. We have already done a part one, so if you found this first, follow the link above to take you back to part one so you can watch part one, and then it'll get you to part two. And now we continue. So, we were chatting just before the break about the pressure, about the importance of keeping the path clear for those that come beyond us, and as much as we can and hope. Do you know what makes me sad is I get the impression that the silent generation and the boomers kind of hoped we would make a difference, us Gen Xers. Well, I'm a Gen X, Lee's a Gen X. And the thing is, we've done a terrible job. I do blame our parents because they were raised by they were either boomers or raised by boomers, so they were a bunch of idiots anyway. But yeah, I mean, what's your take on that in terms of what, I've shared what I think we need to be doing as the grown-ups in the room. What are your thoughts on that, Devin?
Yeah, it's very weird that you mentioned, the generation because my mom is the first year of Generation X. She's 61, and I'm the last year of Generation X, 1980, which I'm technically, in the in between of the generations. But yeah, it's kind of sad, but I think it goes to that adage that you can't be what you don't see. And unfortunately, speaking from my personal experience, just conversations with my mom, she was really torn about, being a mother because she didn't know how to emulate that. She didn't have the best relationship with her mom. Same thing with my dad. He didn't have the best relationship with his dad. So it was really up to me to do that work and, to be the driving force in fixing those relationships, having those hard conversations. And unfortunately, a lot of the early Gen X's don't, they don't want to have those tough dialogues, because that's not what they were used to, keep family business in the family and mind this and do this, and you don't get involved with things that don't have anything to do with you, but it does, because everyone's connected to it in by some point. And I wouldn't say they were stupid. Well, some stuff they did was definitely stupid. Their decisions to get married and have kids very very young, was, I think, a big cause of the problem. And so the effect of that was a lot of the baby boomers were raising their grandkids, so the things that you pick up and the things that you learn, especially between birth and seven, I think it just kind of carry over. It's like those generational curses that everyone's speaking of and trying to break, what I do in health and wellness, it's generational. Things are just passed to you without you knowing. And it is sad because those are the same people who are in the head of every major country right now. They're 60 and 70 years old, and they aren't thinking about the people coming up. You mentioned keeping the path clear. And my matriarchal great grandmother was full blood Cherokee. And one of the concepts in Native American is you should be preparing for 7 generations ahead. 7. You should be acting and living in a way that preserves 7 generations ahead of you. And people aren't, whether it be global warming or the economy or the laws that they're trying to put into place. They're not thinking about anyone but their own personal beliefs. And it's sad, and it's very scary because they are going to their graves fighting for these constructs that aren't serving the greater good. And yeah, I mean, and we can't just chalk it up to what they learned, because at some point, you just have to, let's be logical, And I don't think people are thinking that way. People are off in their own world, but so consumed with what other people might be doing. Like, why are you
Yeah.
worried about what I'm in my bedroom? I'm gay, you're straight. I am not worried at all about what you are doing, but you are putting all your time and effort into me. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, don't follow me on social media just to say you don't like me. Don't listen to music or watch a movie just to say something negative about it. It just makes no sense to me. If you don't like something, why would you surround yourself? And at the same time, if you wouldn't want something done to you, why would you put so much effort in doing it towards someone else? It just doesn't make sense. And luckily, I can say my mom has come so far. Like her arc and her trajectory has. I mean, we were taking shots of tequila this weekend and going out and singing karaoke, and having my mom talks about transgender and and gay issues and just all this stuff. That in itself gives me hope, because if you knew my mom when I was a teenager, you'd have been like, oh, ain't no way. So when people do take that time to fill that space and open themselves up, it just, I don't know, it's like a weight is lifted. She's still who she is. She still doesn't, condone what I'm doing, but she's not putting it up there in that space where she feels like she doesn't want to be around me, or she, pulling out Bible verses and all this stuff. She's not that person anymore. She's given herself that space to hold on to what she feels is true without letting it affect her other relationships. So I think that's very, very important. What year were you born in, if I may ask? I don't want to ask the lady, but I'm trying to get some context. My mom is 61. So she's born in 61. Oh, and she'll be 63 this year. So to see her later in life come to that space, that's what gives me hope, despite what goes on in our government and your parliament. The
Yeah,
screaming, the yelling, the
I
infighting.
I was born in 1970, but in Zimbabwe, so more like 1950. culturally,
Yeah.
culturally, it was more like 1950. And Lee?
I was born in South Africa in 1973. So again, similar kind of mindset. And I mean, it just brings me on to grandmother, my late grandmother on my mother's side. She lived to be 93, so she'd seen a lot. But in the South Africa that she grew up, it was obviously very much apartheid and things like that. And along with her generation, she had that kind of attitude and mindset. And we had these kind of like under the apartheid government, these like homelands for non-white people, and they used to have casinos there because casinos were banned in South Africa under. And she was quite embarrassing because we'd go to this casino on the south coast of Natal, and she would take her own knives and forks with her because being in the homelands, there was that mixing of races, and she couldn't bear the thought of using a knife and fork that a non-white person had used, and she would take her own cutlery with her. And kind of like seeing the transformation of, and how after the 1994 election, how her attitude had also changed. And she was like quite accepting of non-white people in the end, and she was in a frail care in the last few years. And some of her best friends were like non-white nurses, and that gave me a great deal of hope that somebody that entrenched for all those years under a particular mindset was able to change and have an acceptance of some sort.
To transcend that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much what my company was founded on. Kind of the nerd, who the self-taught nerd. Like my mom still talks about it. Like I read so much when I was young, like thick books. Like just go to the library. My sister Tamika was actually 3 years ahead of me, and I was helping her with her schoolwork. Third grade, second grade. I had read pretty much everything in my elementary library by the time I was in third grade. And my mom loved it until I started really venturing out and reading other books, philosophy, world religions, really history, that we started butting heads really bad when I started unfolding the curtain of, organized religion. And still, like you said with your grandmother, it is possible. It is possible for you to shift your perspective. And it just takes a moment. to really stand back and look at yourself objectively. And a lot of people don't do that. They don't really know the difference between a belief and an agreement. They don't know the difference between observing and absorbing. And you have to be able to look at those things because they're completely different. You agree to things that people tell you because you don't know any better. Someone tells you this man did this and this is God and this is this. Between 0 and 7, you have no idea of what's going on. You don't know what it means to manipulate someone. You kind of are starting to understand lies because, maybe you realize Santa Claus isn't real and Easter Bunny isn't real and all these things. But at the same time, you just take in so much stuff subconsciously. I mean, think about all the things you hear between your birth and 2 before you can speak. That's just encoded into you because you're just taking in this information. And that's, what I meant by, generational curses and that energy that we just hold on to ourselves. We hold on to it so tight because it's like it's all we know because it's the first thing that we know. And it's just so refreshing when you hear someone say, you know what, I was wrong. I've learned this, or I can see this from this way now. That is just so refreshing. It's like, you can breathe, but people don't take the time to do that. They just hold on to what they have been ingrained with despite any amount of evidence. Like, it blows my mind. You say you're from South Africa, the cradle of civilization, and it's racist. It's like, it makes no, let's really take it back. I'm in Africa. I am in Africa and I'm a white person, but I feel like I am better than the people who are from here. Their land, their country, their home. And now I've migrated here, but somehow now I'm on a pedestal because of that. It just, like, let's really think about that. It makes no sense. And I'm so glad to hear that people are taking that time. Like, my grandmother's 80. She's the coolest person in the world. Still carries a gun. Her set are special. But she is the most liberal person that I know who really believes in God. Like, she has a very deep, deep connection with God, the idea and the concept of God. But she is the coolest person in the world. She can talk about anything, and of course I'm speaking in the context of knowing her here, not in my mom's context and their relationship. But even that has changed. It's never going to be perfect, but even those dynamics is just, who are you hurting? Why am I hurting them? Am I hurting? Hurt people, And so when we think about that, sometimes we have to not be the negative side of the Aries energy, the ram who's just standing their ground and butting heads with anybody just to do it. I think it's important, and it's more so than important, it's necessary. It's something we need more so than ever. Just that the ability to step back and take ourselves out of situations, completely take ourselves out of the situation and just look at it and really look at what's going on. Don't take it in, because once you take something in and you absorb it into you, it gets filtered through all of your own experiences. And then it's no longer what it was. It's been filtered, it's been, changed, and, you've you've altered it in some way to fit your perspective. And we have to be able to not do that. We have to be able to get to a place where what doesn't affect us shouldn't upset us. I guess that's the best way to say it.
Did you know we've got an absolutely wonderful merch store? You can buy merch from the show. You can buy this mug, which supports my rugby team, the Sussex Dragons. This is one of my favorites. This is best part of waking up, turf tears in my cup. We also have t-shirts, which support my rugby team, and t-shirts which express our dissatisfaction with England rugby for the way they've treated trans people. And for you bikers out there, we've got our Sisters on Steel Motorcycle Club. Scan this QR code or follow the links on tigergirl.substack.com. Now back to the show. Yeah, I think the one thing which I'm also really passionate about at the moment is like you mentioned about, what you do in your own home is nobody's business. And I almost feel that that's a bit of a capitulation because and I've found myself having to because believe it or not, there's actually people who are lesbian, gay, or bi, so the LG and the B, who want to dispense with the TQI, all of that.
Hmm.
And they think that they're coming at it from the perspective that their rights are secure. And the overturning of Roe v. Wade was a clarion call to everybody that
Hmm.
rights, you can lose them in a heartbeat.
Yep.
And what I say to a lot of my gay friends is I say to them, if you think your rights are so secure and you think you are accepted by society, try kissing in public
Hmm.
or holding hands, doing what
Yep.
straight people do all the time. And then you'll see that they're only happy if you do it in your own home.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
that's different to saying, so I'm like, what people get up to in their bedroom. Well, for starters, it's never anyone's business anyway. But why can't we extend that beyond the boundaries of one's own home and just say, listen, we are first and foremost human beings, and let's just start from that perspective. And I think one of the biggest challenges we have is, and you talked about, the sum of all our divisions is the whole of us. I think that's how you put it. And actually, one of the things which Lee and I have spoken about before is right from the moment we're born, the first division comes down, and that is, what's your gender?
Hmm.
So this whole idea that we've got to be marked, and if you've got an M, you'll get an M if you were born with a penis, and you'll get an F if you're born with a vagina.
Hmm.
And then everything is in that. If everything comes down to that, like there was Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. So you can't
Yep.
have two M's together, and you can't have two F's together, and an M can't become an F, and an F can't become an M. And heaven forbid that you should decide you don't want to be either. Because people just, they can't handle that. And
Hmm.
when you get down to the bathroom debate, it's only a debate, it's only an issue because we separate them.
Yep.
And the fact that unisex bathrooms have been around for 20 years, and though, in a public space, it's probably the safest place to have that because there's lots of people around. If you're going to mess around with someone in any way, in a public bathroom, if the place where you're washing your hands and just getting on with stuff, you don't know who else is there. There could be someone more violent than you are, and you start
Hmm.
causing trouble, somebody might just sort you out. So there's kind of like a leveler in making bathrooms unisex. And it's like, I'll never forget, they were doing something. You're right, actually, probably all started with Donald Trump. But when they were talking about, they wanted to do like a bathroom ban or something
Hmm.
at one of the universities in the States, and they were interviewing people on campus. And one of the people was saying, so what are they going to do? They're going to put urinals in the women's loos. And you're like, well, actually, I hate to tell you this, but men can also pee sitting down. Certainly, it's male privilege that they can do it standing up. It's
Yes.
helpful at beer festivals and concerts and any public gathering where there aren't enough ladies loose. But at the end of the idea that these people think that it's been put into their heads that men in skirts are going to wander up to a urinal and hoik their skirt up and pee standing up at a urinal in a woman's bathroom. It just That's the level of stupidity,
Yes.
unfortunately, that the MAGA crowd attract. And likewise with, we've got our own far right issues in the UK. And it's quite funny because I was chucking a whole lot of cans outside the other day, and I said, yeah, this is my can of Trump supporters. And my housemate said to me, what? Why? I said, well, they're very noisy and lack any substance. So
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly. And it's so funny because doesn't even mean male female. Generis, I think I'm pronouncing that right. My declension's off. I haven't studied Russian in a long time, but the Latin word was kind, type, group. And it wasn't until the word gender didn't even exist until the 15th century, early 1500s, I think. And then sex was always male or female until the 20th century when sex became a verb. It became, an act as opposed to that, it became something explicit. And so then they started using gender as male and female, but it's not. I mean, you have to really think. And once again, being a nerd and people not taking the time to think about it, but all embryos are blank. They sit there. And then you have to have the right balance of hormones and genes, and all these things have to present themselves in order for it to determine male or female. And imagine the scope of that. What if this hormone doesn't produce enough of this, or this gene is, mutated or different? Then things are going to not be completely balanced in that spectrum. You have to think, if you go from nothing and you go to one extreme or the other, all of the nuances between that. It's crazy. Like when people say gender, I'm like, no, gender is your brain. Sex is between your legs. They are two completely different things. And if you know how the brain works, one exists on one hemisphere and the other one exists on the other.
Yeah.
So people don't take the time to really think about it. I mean, I'm not saying that, like, there's this big talk about one of the athletes who got denied to go to the Olympics because they're transgender. Yes, I think that was the right decision because you were 25, 26, so you already had, very high levels of testosterone. Yes, I think for that argument's sake, that was the right decision. But that doesn't reduce that person's identity or their right to identify and see themselves as whatever they want to. I mean, you just can't help it. Your testosterone levels are always going to be too high to compete as a woman. You're 6'4". They're not going to let you do it. I get it. But it doesn't diminish their right to express themselves in that way. Maybe there's going to be rules and that's fine. But we shouldn't be looking at that sense of labeling everyone. Like, you're this, that's what it is, and there's no in between. I mean, that's just wrong. And it's like, yeah, from the very beginning, even before you're born, gender reveal party. This is your
Yeah.
name. You're going to play baseball. You're going to be this. It's like, ugh, like what?
Okay, let's
Like,
just before we go into a break, I think, Lee, we need to have Devon on with Carly. We
Yes,
can debate
definitely.
the gender and sport angle, because it's something her and I are very passionate about, and I don't want to derail this conversation into that one. But I think we could have a really good debate on that. All right,
I
let's
think so.
close off part two, and please stick around. You can follow on. There'll be a link to pick up part three, and we'll be back on the other side of that.